Now let's begin with security matters. The Nigerian Senate has expressed worry over the resurgence of Boko Haram activities in parts of Adamawa State and the northeast region, prompting urgent calls for enhanced security intervention. The motion, sponsored by all senators from the northeast, was raised by Senator Aminu Abbas, who cited fresh attacks in Hong and Gobi local government areas of Adamawa State. Senator Abbas called for the immediate deployment of troops to curb the renewed threat. Other lawmakers blamed the development on overstretched military resources, with much of the force currently focused on banditry in the northwest. Senate President Godswill Akpabio described the resurgence as a sign that terrorist elements now feel emboldened, especially due to Nigeria's porous borders and shifting military attention. We'll bring you more security-related stories in the course of the bulletin. But first, let's tell you that the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, said though President Bola Tinubu's reform initially triggered hardship, they had started yielding measurable outcomes. Idris insisted that the renewed Hope Agenda, Tinubu's signature program, was laying the foundation for Nigeria's economic renaissance through bold reforms, strategic investments, and inclusive policy innovations. This was the Akwa Ibom State Governor Umo Eno, as he said, Nigeria's economic problems predated the administration of Tinubu, stressing that the president deserved national support to steer the country through the difficult times. Speaking at the 2025 Nigeria Public Relations Week in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital, Idris stated that the Tinubu administration policy direction had repositioned Nigeria for significant economic reforms, which were yielding visible results across critical sectors. Now to discuss this, we're joined by economic analyst Olusegun Okunade and public affairs analyst Jide Ojo. You're welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Grand.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now, let me ask Mr. Shassan, Minister of Information and National Orientation Mohammed Idris said though President Bola Tinubu's reforms initially triggered hardship, as we all know, they had started yielding measurable outcomes. Do you agree with this, Shassan?
My answer will be no, even though so much of this policy seems to be good on paper. But when it comes to yielding the dividend desire of the citizen of the country, it's a no. At the intro of this news, you just spoke about the level of insecurity, the resurgence of the attacks on certain communities. And you and I understand the attack or even on the food basket and other areas of the country. So if by my own measure, which I've actually put before everyone, must measure anything, we must speak from the perspective of security. A secured environment is a prosperous environment. We might feel that we have certain reforms that we are putting together. That might be more of the documentation. And our problem has not been in area of policies. It has been when it comes to implementation, because most of the time we lack the follow through in some of these policies that we put to paper that will look very fantastic. But when it comes to implementation, you see people coming up with sabotage. So if by my own parameters I'm measuring Mr. President, I feel what the minister is saying to us as citizens, we are not feeling it. We can't measure it because what quantifiable do you want to give to the level of people that cannot even be secured in their homes? People can no longer travel the way we used to do years back, when people like me feel comfortable traveling at night to carry out business in some part of the state. How many of our leaders, even the minister inclusive, can move via by road, considering the dilapidable road or situation of our road? So these are critical things that still call for government attention. They might claim they are doing so much. In terms of policy, we might feel that we have this documentation coming up right. But when it comes to implementation and the citizen feeling the impact of some of these policies is still far from it, if you ask me.
Still far from it. I hear you, Shassan, but let me come to Jide now. Jide, Nigeria's economy grew by 4.6% in the fourth quarter of 2024. It's been the strongest in a decade. So the question is, what structural reforms contributed mostly to this growth, and how sustainable is it given the current inflationary pressures that we're experiencing currently?
Thank you. So the question is, we are experiencing growth without development. The growth that is recorded is from both the oil and non-oil sector. And we know that the non-oil sector is contributing immensely. The telecommunication, the ICT, the solid minerals, even tax is contributing a lot more than before. And of course, the savings from the removal of subsidy and the unification of the exchange rate. So there is more money than before, but you know, when you have growth without development, these ordinary citizens will not feel the positive impact. And I do not blame the minister for saying what he's doing or for what he said in Uyo. That is what he was appointed to do. He is supposed to be the marketer of the government. So as a Minister of Information and National Orientation, he's speaking to statistics, but statistics do not put food on our table. The real growth that will impact the lives of ordinary citizens should be seen in the improvement in their standard of living, not the cost of living. Now what we have is in increase in the cost of living. The telecommunication tariff has gone up, the electricity tariff has gone up, the fuel price has gone up, even the so-called billions invested in the compressed natural gas has not permitted. We are yet to see the full impact of that CNG investment. And this is 2-year midterm, and more people are out, more people are in poverty than out of poverty. High rate of unemployment, high inflation. They are celebrating 0.5 decrease, the 0.5 decrease in the inflation from March to April. What is the significance when you have less than 1% decrease? The UK that just had, whose inflation is about 2%, 2.5% or thereabout, it's all over the world that UK economy is on the, cost of living in UK is on the increase. But just compare a country with 2.5% inflation to our own that is about 24%, 23 point something percent, and yet you are celebrating that you have a growth. Growth without development does not impact positively on the living standard of the ordinary citizen.
All right, Chide. It's just growth without development. I'm sure you might agree, and I'm sure a whole lot of people out there agree, but how do we measure this? Despite the government's claims of positive outcomes, public dissatisfaction, well, as we can see, it still persists. What are the key factors influencing this perception? How can the government actually address these issues?
Just like my senior colleague said, you see, when you look about this growth and development, the federal government, for one, assumption of this administration and the removal of subsidy pumped more money to the state. I will always say this, that what we've lacked in this country is having a system that monitors activities. And if you look at one of the judgment by Supreme Court to give autonomy to the local government, these are fantastic policy to actually drive home development right from grassroots. But you ask yourself, 1 year after that court judgment, do we have the implementation of this, that the grassroots can have impact of the money that is actually being shared? Don't forget that the government, through the new tax form, have intention of increasing the load that go to the state and reduce that goes to the federal government. That's why I said policy is not our problem, but our problem is always implementation. And what speaks to this is how much are we nipping at the bud in corruption, when certain funds are even disbursed to the people for the development of the citizen and it's being cornered by few without anybody challenging them. What do you expect? Expect more people who have seen the action of the earlier carrying out more of those such devastating acts and impoverishing the people the more. I think the area we need to concentrate more is to build a system that checks the activity of some of how these disbursements are actually being carried out. If you go to several agencies and several of these ministries, we still see more money coming out. States are having more money, but they are even struggling to even take care of personnel, not to talk of develop good infrastructure, even when a lot of them have received so much. So I feel our monitoring mechanism lacks that which can actually develop us as a nation. And that's why we keep hearing that despite that they have actually stiffened the neck of the citizen to get more from us, and they have more at their disposal, we are not seeing that transforming to development, just like my brother said. So we must tighten up the area of monitoring some of the funds that have been disbursed, and that's nipping corruption. How much do we punish people that we have actually confirmed? Most of the time, it's always allegation for years, and that allegation will come and go, and a lot of them will use some of the funds that actually been mismanaged by them to even contest and use to suppress the people. I think this is another area we need to focus on if we must go. Punish people for wrongdoing, and the other people to serve as deterrent to others in perpetrating the same ill.
Shasa, I hear you on 2 points there. You're talking about accountability and then trust. While you're talking about policies for accountability, then do we trust the grassroots apparatus enough to actually hand over this responsibility to them? That's a rhetorical question. Let me come to Jide. Jide, what additional policies or measures would you recommend to address the lingering challenges of inflation and also unemployment?
Well, see, we are not short of course, we still need some legislations. For instance, in fighting corruption, we still need to do a lot more. We need the whistleblower protection law. And then we need to ensure that the anti-corruption agencies are well resourced, because monitoring is not even an end in itself. When you monitor, what are you monitoring? Do you have the capacity to monitor? Are you checking the right thing? Do you have do you get the right information to assist you in your monitoring exercise? Freedom of Information Act is still being observed in breach. As a journalist, I'm sure, my brother, sometimes you run into a coup d'etat trying to get verified information about certain ministries, departments, and agencies. Look at what happened with our refineries. We were told that the Warrior and Port Harcourt refineries have started to work. They made a show of it by inviting the media stations to come and see the newly refurbished refineries. But the Warrior refinery shut down less than 1 month after the celebrated restreaming. And from that time to date, it has not worked. And over $1.5 billion was borrowed from Exim Bank of China to fix this refinery. And what we hear after is that one of the MDs of these 3 refineries that was recently sacked had about 80 billion in his account. So there is a House of Reps money committee on petrol or petroleum sector. There is Senate committee. There are civil society working in the area of budget tracking and all of that. But why have they not been able to pick up some of these things? The point speaks to issue of pollution and capacity. Because sometimes those whom you engage to also go and monitor are themselves, they are colluding. They don't have the capacity to even ask the right questions and see the right documentations to help with the tracking exercise that they have embarked. So that's why National Assembly will always do catch up. They will go on oversight 1 day, 2 days, but they will not see anything. And there are allegations that sometimes the committee members are induced to look the other way. So the problem is actually multifarious. But coming back to the question about what we need to do, as I've said, we need to tighten the nuts and bolts of our legislations. We still need a couple of more legislations. We also need to build capacity. Civil society, media, their capacity have to be built to be able to properly track some of these disbursements. A lot more is going to states and the subnational. But what becomes of those resources? And then you look at the inflation rate. Today we are celebrating over 50 trillion budget, which is the highest so far. But in real terms, that 50 trillion is less than 30 trillion of 3 years ago, before the removal of subsidy, before the devaluation of the currency. So the currency has been devalued by over 40%. So what do? The same projects that you awarded for 30 billion 3 years ago, there is now a need to review upward the cost of that project because of the rising cost of living. So it's a cobweb of a sort. But I think citizen awareness and citizen action, media advocacy, and capacity building of the right people to follow through the money will do a lot in terms of accountability and transparency in governance. Because even though Nigeria is a signatory to open government partnership, we haven't seen much impact of that open government partnership.
All right,
we still have a lot of opacity in government.
Okay, then, Jide Ojo. I want to say thank you very much, Jide Ojo, and also Olusegun Okunade for joining us to give your 2 pence on the issue here. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
My pleasure. Do enjoy the rest of
your day. Thank you very much for having us.
Let's go on a break now. When we get back, court reprimands separatist leader Nnamdi Kanu's lawyer over social media conduct. We'll bring you the details shortly. Welcome back now. Let's go to judicial matters. The trial of the controversial leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, resumed on a tense note at the Federal High Court in Abuja. A senior advocate of Nigeria and lead counsel to the federal government, Adegboyega Awomolo, formally objected to a request by Kanu's family for a live media coverage of the proceedings. In a letter submitted to the court, Awomolo urged the judge to ban the use of mobile phones in the courtroom, accusing one of Kanu's lawyers, Aloy Ejimako, of posting misleading and inflammatory content on social media. The presiding judge, Justice James Omotosho, condemned the conduct, describing it as unprofessional and a threat to the integrity of the trial. Meanwhile, the defense team proceeded with the cross-examination of the second prosecution witness, codenamed Triple B. The matter was adjourned to Thursday, May 22nd, for the continuation and conclusion of the cross-examination.
Things went well. We continued the cross-examination of BBB. Today is day 2 of his cross-examination, and we'll be back here tomorrow to continue and hopefully proceed with other witnesses.
Now, 7 inmates have escaped from the medium security custodial center in Ilesha, Osun State, after the facility's old perimeter wall collapsed. Their escape followed an overnight rainfall on Tuesday, with the breach occurring around 2 a.m. and was caused by the structural failure of the wall during the storm. NCOS spokesman Umar Abubakar disclosed this in a statement, saying authorities have since launched a manhunt to locate and return the escapees to custody. The Controller General of Corrections, Sylvester Ndidi Nwakuche, has ordered an immediate investigation into the incident. And now to more security matters. For the 3rd time in 7 days, gunmen have attacked Okoloke, an agrarian community in Yagba West local government area of Kogi State, abducting 4 persons. The latest incident occurred in the early hours of Tuesday when an unidentified number of armed men stormed the area. A local source said the assailants forced their way into the residence of Ezekiel Durojaiye, a retiree and respected community leader in nearby Okunran village, abducting him along with 3 others into the bush at gunpoint. The incident has further heightened fears and tensions among residents. Yagba West has recently become a hotspot for abductions. Last Thursday, gunmen kidnapped Oba James Dada Ogunyamda, the traditional ruler of the village. The latest attack brings numbers of kidnapped individuals from the same community to 8 in 1 week. And it was a tragic situation at Gobirawa community in Dutsima local government area of Katsina State as bandits launched a brutal attack on Saturday evening, leaving a trail of death and destruction. Unlike previous raids focused on looting, this assault took a different turn as homes were burned, innocent civilians were executed, and even animals were not spared. Experts suggest this marks a shift in tactics, a psychological warfare campaign aimed at terrorizing residents into submission. Now, News Central TV visited the community, witnessing firsthand the aftermath of the brutality meted out on residents and the harrowing accounts from survivors. Our correspondent Jamil Mumbai tells us more.
This is where Isuhu Baba's son took his last breath, murdered by bandits inside his own home. The blood stains on the floor are all that remain of a teacher who dedicated his life to educating children. While many villages have surrendered to the control of bandits, the people of Gobirawa community have remained resilient, with local vigilantes fiercely defending their land. But after this latest attack, which claimed 30 lives, including 5 burned alive, fear has gripped the residents as many have now fled in droves, abandoning their homes in search of safety.
If you look at, there are so many of them leaving the place. They are packing everything, taking out everything they have, moving to other areas, because they don't know when security is coming. And even after the attack, nobody came to them until the next day. And no government official, up to the time we went there, we saw nobody there. So if you look at what is happening, it looks like government have abandoned the area, have abandoned the people, and that's why they are fleeing. It's a message they are sending. They want to drive the people out of there. For what? That's their duty of the government to find out.
For years, they fought off bandits until last Saturday. The attack was not just brutal, it was a massacre.
Da suka rugo, wani suka shigo ta nan cikin zaure su kuma suka tsallako nan katanga. Shine suka shigo gidan suka same su. Da suka same su, to da suka kunna wuta, shi wannan na farko zai haura na wurin. Suka ganshi, suka halbe shi a waje da mutuwa. Shi ma wannan na biyu ya haura na ya fara cin wuta. Shi ma nan suka da kashe shi. Nan da mutuwa. Shi kuma wannan na uku ga inda ya da mutuwa nan iya kawunsa zuwa nan wurin. Ya kone nan ya mutu da halin bindiga. Su kuma annan wanda ke suka kone nan wurin suka ci suka cinye. Nan suka cinye gaba ɗaya ba abin da ke amfani a jikinsu. Sun kone kurmus a gidan Yahuza ne.
Yahuza's family escaped, but 3 boys ran into his room to hide. They burned them alive.
Kaga nan katiwa ce nan. Nan suka shiga suka boye. Amma gaba ɗaya sai da suka zo suka sa fetur suka toyo annan mutane.
12 lives lost, 12 families shattered. This wasn't just an attack. Experts say it's a psychological warfare.
They are trying to traumatize and so that nobody can stay any longer in those areas.
So this kind of aggressiveness, I've never seen it, I've never heard of it, or banditry. Now if it are something else, probably a religious war or tribal war or something like that, normally you see this kind of things. But when a bandit who's supposed to be looking for money, for how to just get what he wants and go back to the business, now embarks into this kind of thing, definitely there's something behind this. There's something behind this recent change in the tactics of the bandit.
For those that survive at Gobirawa community, survival has come at a cost, with homes reduced to a pile of ashes, livelihoods erased, the streets now empty, the scars will remain forever. In Katsina, reporting for News Central, I am Jamil Mumbai.
Amidst the surge in Boko Haram attacks in Nigeria's northeast, the Borno State government has taken measures to reclaim territories that recently fell under insurgents' control. As part of those measures, Governor Babagana Zulum spent 3 nights in Mate, Ran of Kalabalge and Wogo of Gamburungala local government areas, coordinating security operations and engaging with local leaders. News Central's Umaru Kirawa reports on the unfolding security situations in Borno State.
Communities like Marte, Ran and Wulgo on the fringes of the Lake Chad in Nigeria's northeast have been severely impacted by insurgent activities. The situation had forced families to seek safer areas in their neighboring towns and villages, which were later resettled. Leaving communities deserted further make the areas vulnerable for infiltration and planting of improvised explosives devices by terrorists. This has necessitated the governor spending nights on the front line, coordinating security efforts in the areas recently targeted by the insurgents.
And chairman and the crash no more guluma crash no mera alanguro. Dana karo wonde mataki kalande mukonde ngwanyande guluma. Gayana e bikaunga we man awle bare yana duk so isa kinu pizza kono dia duk so sene on nakwe.
Kutunda bulando namnuwa da ngilai bulando rono wondo chini we ala itiya bulando ngalachi. We want to get iskim. Amma odiyan da idan zuri suwan don kuri ne mana ga goza mana da sayar sadi. Sai wa hanzan sarana isa ala itiya adia ka fan kaunda wala ro andia soro. Amma wanda bulando chinu ko lui. Bulando chinu ko lui isa gani masa da goza chattun yana ga dare lerowi. Amma ande ala itiya kawo gana duro am kudi gananya.
At least 2 million people have been displaced and thousands killed amidst the insurgency in Nigeria in the last over a decade. So far, over 300,000 of the insurgents have surrendered to the government, a development largely seen as an initiative for peace.
Marte local government area of Borno State consists of over 300 towns and villages. And now we are having only one standing village. If we cannot maintain one standing village, that means we lost a whole local government area to insurgents, which is very obnoxious, and I think we shall not allow this to happen again. And therefore I'm calling upon the Nigerian army, I'm calling upon the federal government so that we can put heads together in order to maintain this single town.
The battle to maintain peace and stability is continuing, and the hope of most of the people in the Lake Chad region is for the war to be history. From the fringes of the Lake Chad for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Governor of Borno State Babagana Zulum says the Nigerian army is critically under-equipped in the fight against terrorism. In an exclusive interview on News Central's Breakfast Show, Governor Zulum expressed concern over the increasing sophistication of terrorist operation in the region. He warned that without modern tools and technology, the military may be outmatched. Zulum also decried the slow, bureaucratic process in procuring military equipment and called on President Bola Tinubu to urgently address the issue.
I also want to commend the president because he has been doing some things in order to tackle this situation. So people, Nigerians should be patient enough so that we shall give them time. I believe with what I've said, something shall be done. And then my few advices to the government of Nigeria and federal government is that one, we should prioritize security. Because the nexus between peace and security, peace and development, peace, security and development need not to be overemphasized. While we are doing road construction, I agree. We are building homes, I agree. But most importantly, let us prioritize security. Let both Borno state governments, national and subnational, put together enough resources on ground so that we can procure equipment. The army doesn't have the necessary equipment on ground to fight the insurgents. And I want to also inform you that right now, the insurgents are using technology to fight the soldiers on ground. A few days ago, I had a meeting with the chief of army staff, The chief of army staff said that he's looking for about 32 drones, and he will end the insurgency. He's right. Each drone is costing about $5.5 million. Why can't we put resources so that we shall buy these drones? Let us prioritize insecurity. And another issue that we shall look into is the issue of procurement of military equipment, both hardware and software. Let us remove contractocracy in the procurement of the military equipment. Let us deal directly from government to government, so that we shall get value for money. Otherwise, most of the contractors, I'm not saying all, once you give them money, they will not even buy the equipment. And some of the monies are going into the torturous, bureaucratic melting pots of the ministerial systems. If we want to do right, we can put heads together, and this madness will come to an end within the next 6 months. But the right thing must be done. Federal government and state government must come together. We need to prioritize security, and then we need not to politicize insecurity, which is very important. The federal government has to listen to us. We shall offer our services and advice on how possibly best we can move forward. And most importantly, the procurement process has to be looked into.
The Federal Capital Territory has recorded several protests at several locations within the city center. Now, one of such is the gathering at the Unity Fountain in Abuja, where protesters identified as original inhabitants of the FCT gathered to get intervention on lawmakers regarding their demands, but were soon dispersed by operators of the Nigerian police force. Now, also, protesters identified as Concerned Christian Youth Forum gathered at the Unity Fountain in Abuja to demand a stop to attacks on Christianity and its leaders in Nigeria. Carrying placards with the inscriptions alleging that human rights activists Omoyele Sowore and other collaborators are responsible for attacks against the Christian faith and also religious leaders. Our News Central's correspondent Aishat Salihu has been monitoring the protests and now brings us the details here in this report. Aisha, I hear that you're live with us. Aisha, please, can you give us details about these protests in Abuja?
Thank you so much, Mazino, for joining me. I'm right here at the gate of the National Assembly here in the city center, Abuja. Earlier today, we had a protest by the original inhabitants of the FCT, where they were here. They gathered to make their demands, to let the lawmakers hear their voices. They were calling out to the lawmakers, but just before they could even get some form of attention by the lawmakers, the police operatives stationed at the front of the National Assembly gate, as you can see behind me, they soon dispersed the protesters, deploying tear gas canisters on them, and a lot of them had to run for safety. They scampered to, all around, and then they had to run for safety. And that was what happened earlier today. They were unable to even state what their demands were. But from what we gathered, they were here to speak to the lawmakers. This is not the first time they are gathering, calling on the Nigerian government to look at their plight, to address some of the issues they are facing, because they are the original inhabitants of the Federal Capital Territory. Part of their demands would be infrastructure, the land dispute, and all of that in the mix. That was what happened earlier today at the gates of the National Assembly. And now, away from what happened at the National Assembly would be the Unity Fountain, where the Concerned Christian Youth Forum also held a protest, and they were demanding, calling on the government to stop some people in the country. They have alleged that there are people in the country who are perpetrating what I'll call, they are inciting violence within the Christian community. They are saying that, they're alleging that these people would be, one of them would be the human rights activist Omoyele Sowore. They allege that he and other collaborators that they mentioned in their speech and also during the interviews, that these people are responsible for going on social media, not just social media now, even traditional media, to put up content and information that may not be true, defaming the character of these religious leaders, and also it's telling badly on the Christian faith.
Aisha, please, would you tell us exactly what the details are regarding the demands of the original residents of the FCT? What were their demands before they were dispersed?
Well, for the original residents of the FCT, like I said, they didn't even have the chance to make their demands. But part of their demands, which we've always known over the years, would be land dispute. They have always tried to seek the face of the government, where they would tell the government that the government is sitting on their own lands. They need settlement. And then that has been a debate over the years. They've been asking for certain rights. They've been asking for what they say they deserve, since the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, is sitting on their own land. I mean, the nation's capital is more like they are the original inhabitants of the FCT. So they feel they deserve some form of compensation from the government. It would be from jobs, creation of employment. It would be the government looking at them holistically, creating, the basic social amenities, because they are saying, since the government of the day is operating from their own land, they should have access to some of the incentives that would come from the fact that they own the land here and not for government.
So we hear the Senate is actually sitting at the moment, or have sat. Did they address any of these issues by the original residents of the FCT?
I beg your pardon, I didn't get that clearly.
I asked if the Senate, during their sitting, addressed any of the issues raised by the protesters.
Well, like I said earlier, they didn't even get the chance for the lawmakers to step out and address them right at the gate of the National Assembly. But then we're still trying to get information from inside the National Assembly, from the plenary sessions today, to know if at all they addressed some of the demands. Perhaps they heard people were gathered at the gate of the National Assembly to meet with them. Perhaps they would escalate their demands. We're still waiting to get the details of that. But for now, I have no information regarding if they addressed those demands by the protesters earlier today at the gate of the National Assembly.
All right, now, Aisha, moving on to the second protest, which you spoke to us about regarding the Christian Youth Forum. Now, regarding the claims that they made about human rights activist Omoyele Sowore and the fact that he has been responsible for some of the tirades that they've experienced, or the Christian leaders have experienced, what do you know about the details of this?
Well, according to what the convener said, and I'm quoting from the statement that he shared with members of the press, he did say that they are deeply disturbed by the persistent campaign of defamation and slander being waged against the Christian faith and its representatives, from social media platforms to traditional media outlets, and they have seen a growing trend of misinformation and hate speech that seeks to undermine the integrity of Christianity and its leaders. And they have said they have conducted their own investigation and research, and they have seen the trend over the years where this particular individual, as they allege, Omoyele Sowore and his collaborators, would go on to perhaps, go to when these people who are slandering the religious men, the religious leaders, the Christian religious leaders on social media. I'm talking about the personality of Pastor Inaka Doboye, and the likes, the general overseers of the main churches in Nigeria. And they also mentioned Daddy Freeze, who is a popular, who is also a media personality. They mentioned a host of others that they are alleging that they are those people who preach against Christianity in form of trying to create this unity among the religion.
Unfortunately, I have to let you go now, but thank you for bringing us the update on these protests. We'll continue to come to you in subsequent bulletins for more information. Thank you. Welcome back. Now, Tanzanian authorities are under fire after detaining two prominent East African activists. Kenyan anti-corruption crusader Boniface Mwangi and Ugandan journalist Agatha Atuhaire. They were arrested on Monday while attending a treason trial for opposition leader Tundu Lissu. According to Amnesty International, on Tuesday, the pair is being held incommunicado by military officials with no confirmed location or charges. Authorities initially claimed the activists were deported, but their families and lawyers say that's false. Wangi's wife says Tanzanian officials have misled them repeatedly, raising fears of abduction. President Samia Suluhu Hassan has warned against foreign interference, saying Tanzania won't tolerate ill-mannered individuals from abroad. Rights groups say the crackdown is part of a broader democratic decline in East Africa. And Burundi is facing its largest refugee influx in over 2 decades, with thousands fleeing ongoing violence in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The sudden surge is overwhelmingly already straining resources in one of the world's poorest countries. Camps like Musenyi near Bujumbura are overcrowded, and aid workers warn of a looming humanitarian disaster. The situation has worsened following deep cuts in U.S. aid funding under the Trump administration, leaving NGOs struggling to meet basic needs like food, shelter, and medical care. Local authorities and humanitarian agencies are calling for urgent international support to prevent a full-blown crisis as Burundi grapples with the growing pressure of sheltering desperate families escaping conflict just across the border. European nations have intensified calls for Israel to halt its expanded military operations in Gaza and allow more humanitarian aid into the besieged territory. Rescue workers reported that at least 19 deaths from new airstrikes on Wednesday, adding to the growing toll in the ongoing conflict. While Israel stated that 93 aid trucks entered Gaza on Tuesday, the United Nations said the delivery was delayed, worsening the dire conditions on the ground. The UN recently received clearance to resume aid shipments for the first time since a complete blockade was imposed on March 2nd, which led to critical shortages of food and medical supplies. In response, the European Union announced a review of its trade cooperation agreement with Israel, citing deepening humanitarian concerns. And now for more on this, we are joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. So what's the latest on the aid situation in Gaza?
Well, this week we were told that 100 trucks were going to be allowed into the Gaza Strip by the IDF to address the dire humanitarian need on the Gaza Strip. Now, those 100 trucks apparently have been released, but no aid is still getting through. The IDF say that they are monitoring the trucks that are getting into Gaza to make sure that Hamas don't get to them first and strip them. But at the moment, the aid trucks seem to be stuck, that they are stuck at a processing center about 3 hours away, and no aid is getting into Gaza. Now, a representative of the UN's World Food Programme said the amount of aid being let in is not sufficient at all, and the fact that it's stuck is actually adding to the dire humanitarian aid that's needed in the area. So, not in wartime, it's estimated that Gaza needs 500 to 600 trucks a day of aid to come into the region. Now, there's been a blockade for 11 weeks, which means no aid has been getting in. And now 100 trucks stuck 3 hours outside Gaza is doing absolutely nothing for the 2.1 million people who are stuck in the enclave without adequate medicines, food, baby formula for babies. Now, a couple of days ago, the UN said that in the next 48 hours, 14,000 babies would die if baby formula was not getting into the enclave. Now, that aid seems to be stuck 3 hours away from Gaza.
Afia, according to what we hear, targets are still being hit in Gaza. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the IDF said it hit 115 terror targets over the past 24 hours. They say that they were militants that were part of the October 7th attacks. 82 people died and 62 people were injured in the Gaza Strip over the past day. And the Palestinian Health Authority are now saying that 53,655 people have been killed in the region since October 7th.
Well, Afi, I want to say thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be back with you this evening for more details. Thank you. And that's all this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. Now, the Senate has raised alarm over Boko Haram resurgence in the northeast region. And for the third time in 7 days, gunmen have attacked Okoloke in Yagba West local government area of Kogi State, abducting 4 persons. We also told you that Congolese refugees in Burundi are facing humanitarian disaster. Now remember, you may send in your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on your screens now. And do follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.